Good afternoon, Aristo.
Well, good morning to you too, Ron. How are you?
I'm good. Perfect timing, as I said in the little chat thing that we did before.
I'm glad I got to notify you this time.
Thank you for that.
Most of the time, well, it's just that this will probably be, unless I notify you otherwise, my normal time, 2 to 3.
Okay. Well, it works well for me.
That's good.
And I'm looking, and it is recording both of us, so this is good.
Okay, well, this is one of those unscripted, where the week was so tumultuous, especially even in terms of your own videos, moving back and forth through all of these topics. um, that I'm just going to go into whatever feels right at this point, even though I don't know what it is coming into the next second. So let's start from your own video. You move from, interestingly, from a position of personal issues into more collective issues, and then intertwine all of these things together, which is one of the values I think. I don't see too many videos like that out there in terms of personal commentary. And the comments you made on the Esther Hicks channeling thing were interesting as well. It made me realize this thing triggered something, a response, a dissonance, as far as disagreement and, not feeling right about it and all of that. On one level, for me, it triggered another kind of dissonance. My problem with it was basically, and I didn't even see the video, but I felt the vibe even without looking at it, and I was completely turned off. And the essence of it for me was, we'll teach you how to think. We will teach you how to direct your thought. And it's like, who are you? It's not about we'll inform you, or we'll provide options, or we'll suggest things to you, or we'll share our experience. We're going to lay down the law for you. We're
Yeah,
going.
that turned me off. I mean, that's right. That's the opening comments. There was one comment before those two things, but those were the second and third thing on the video. And I don't remember what the first thing was, but it was just a brief sentence, a few words. And that turned me off right from the beginning. And then she said, "We're not here to fix anything. Nothing's broken." I mean,
Well,
my God, pay attention. Look at the
I'm
world we
getting.
live in.
Exactly. Well, the thing is, I'm getting a resonance that these people are trying to sell something. A while back, I had somebody contact me that says, "Well, I like your videos, and let's market them. Let's, sell you. Let's put you in chat rooms and in this and that, and make people exposure." And I said, "I don't want that. I believe that if somebody resonates potentially with what I have to say, they'll be attracted to watching it. Synchronistically, it's going to come about. I don't want people who come to me because of some sugarcoating promise or some kind of aggressive message. This is the stuff they teach people in seminars. If you want to sell something, you have to. I went once to get a physics job, and I was kicked out because they said, we're tired of Americans coming to us trying to sell something, trying to sell themselves, trying to sell their ideas. And it usually comes off under the pretext, and I was actually, doing it unconsciously. Um, but they say you have to be assertive and confident and aggressive. And that's basically like the salesman putting their foot in the door. When somebody goes, it's not just the words. I mean, yeah, okay, we'll teach you how to think. We'll teach you that, you don't have to be a slave to obligation. They could have phrased the whole thing differently. I don't disagree with the principles of how you described what they were talking about personally, but the energy behind those principles, the way they present it, seems artificial to me. And let me add that in my experience with the New Age movement in the 90s, I met, people who were into alternative science, especially in Columbus, Ohio. They had this very large expo, New Age Expo, all the authors and all. And a lot of those people had ties to the Ford Foundation and other such uh, funding agencies. A lot of those people were recruiting for new ideas for alternative research that were not in terms for the benefit of humanity. I believe a lot, and there were rumors going on that some of those people were actually government agents, or somehow infiltrating that ideological movement because there are a lot of creative people in this movement and they wanted to keep tabs on it. And they also instill their own ideas. When you add the element of marketing to that, and not just to make money, but a marketing mentality, this thing is just the same old, same old. These people are speaking how to deal with the matrix in terms of the matrix. And my whole thing is that the matrix is shot. You cannot, the matrix concept is like the relationship concept, okay? When it's completely unhealthy, there comes a point when you say, well, this relationship needs to be dropped and I need to go find a better one. And so this is how the matrix is. This matrix needs to be dropped and we need to create a better one without having to go through the discontinuity of destruction, and some stupid apocalypse and I don't know what. So we're searching within ourselves, those of us who are honest about it, and even those of us who are idealistic and may or may not, to whatever degree be honest, we're searching for ways because we want to live in a better world. This is not, to me, so much an issue of selfishness versus selflessness, but an issue that the two are, if you're realistic, they're, you can't separate them. You live in an environment, you cannot just focus on yourself. But the thing is, focusing on yourself includes your environment. A lot of control freaks who are, the epitome of selfishness, for example, they don't focus on themselves. They focus on others, what others are doing, how to manipulate others. The psychopaths themselves, they have no contact with their being. They're completely, that's why they lack empathy. They lack empathy because they're not in touch with themselves. All they have is this programmed urge, this pseudo-ideal, and these false emotions, or these emotions that are a result of affliction, that seem like emotions, but they're not natural because they're stuck. In any case, they're more like automatons, and that's why there's so much transhumanism in this movement. There's so much of a disgust against the human condition, against natural biology, because, these people feel out of control, and they're considered selfish, but they're not focused on self at all. So the whole issue of self versus selflessness, for me, what bothered me about We'll Teach You How to Think is that, they're treating this in terms of some kind of obligatory thing. Like a job.
It's a brainwashing.
Exactly.
I see it as a brainwashing technique.
It is. But I'm trying to step into this thing that I notice is, from a Greek perspective, from a Mediterranean perspective, I'm a little more sensitive to the resonance of the Protestant work ethic mentality than somebody who grew up with that mentality, for example, as most Anglo-Saxon, most American culture is based on that. Most Northern European culture is also based on that. But the word job bothers me, the word, even the word service, in the sense of, well, I do something and you compensate me, or I do something because I have to, or I do something because, I do something because I want to. I believe that a healthy person needs to get to the point where the right thing to do is what they want to do. If you are completely in tune with yourself, whatever you want to do is the right thing to do, no matter what anybody else is going to say, because it's not a matter of everybody being at the same level of accomplishment or health or wholeness. And I don't even know if there are any references for that. It's not a clinical situation. I'm kind of beating around the bush here because it's a very difficult and sensitive topic. I've seen many New Agers speak about service to self versus service to others. And people who even deny the New Age speak in those terms. And I don't see it any different as the Christian morality ethic in a certain sense. The way I grew up, people calling me, well, you're just being selfish, or you're just being egotistical, or you have to leave yourself and consider others, while from the back door, the opposite was being said. Only suckers consider others, Only the smart people are all looking out for number one. And so you have these two conflicting things, and I believe the problem is the gap between them. It's, again, an issue of either or, as opposed to both. My sense of the situation is that I don't feel I have a job, But my sense of purpose is to live life as meaningfully as possible on my terms. And when somebody comes to me and says, well, forget what you think, but I'll tell you how to think, and that sends me, I'm beating around the bush again because it sends me through a loop because I am a communicator. I like to communicate. I like to share my experience. And I've had people come to me, well, you're just telling me how to think. And it took me a long time to be able to move through this hesitation, this sense of guilt, because it went back to all those childhood things of you're just being selfish and you're whatever, this and that and the other. And it says, no, I have to be free to do my own thing. And in order to paradoxically really be of service to others, if that is, which is an admirable thing, I need to set that aside for a minute because it's too much loaded with this obligatory crap that I grew up with. Too much loaded with conditioning of pseudo-moralistic or moralistic relativism and absolutism in conflict. On the one hand, well, there is no truth, there is no morality. On the other hand, you have this, well, we must be, you will do this or you will be punished. And they play off against each other. The good versus bad, the moral versus the amoral, the selfish versus the unselfish. They play off against each other. We've talked about this as the dual. And you've mentioned it in other people. And we're experiencing this right now. And this woman, or I don't even, is Esther a man or a woman? I don't really know.
Esther is a woman. It was
okay.
Esther and Jerry Hicks, but Jerry passed away a year and a half or so ago.
Oh, okay. And this person basically is moving into this mentality that will appeal to people who, have been burdened by false obligations. And so, yeah, I need time to focus on myself here. But then again, this is taken to the limit of deny others. And the whole point...
That's the point, with channeled messages, one of the things to me that makes something resonate with me is when they have to come from a place of looking at the world as it is. And when they don't do that, and Esther Hicks is big on not accepting the reality of the world that we live in, never acknowledging the political implications of anything. And that automatically creates a negative dissonance for me in receiving the message. And there's a lot of good things in some of those messages, but isolated from the world we live in, there's an imbalance there. And that's what I react against.
Here's what struck me. Take all of this, this kind of dynamic and put it into a personal relationship. If you're with your mate, for example, and you come on, this has happened and people talk about it a lot. She's upset. She has something that's bothering her. She's confused, for example. So you go and say, well, get over it. Or you say, well, let's fix it. Or you say, well, it's not about you. It's about, the situation or whatever. All of these responses are considered inappropriate from the person receiving them, and they may get very angry. It's like, look, man, I'm feeling this. Why don't you resonate with my feelings and be connected so we can share the feeling and move through it and see where it takes us? I don't want to fix anything. And that doesn't mean she doesn't want it to get better. She doesn't want the mentality of fixing imposing on her attempt to naturally heal. There is a healing, there is a making things better, and then there's this mentality that comes in of fixing that's distance, because the fixer, the architect, the builder, it's a kind of male image of, coming in with a hammer and pounding in the nails and making everything better, but not participating in the process. The feminine dynamic, and this is funny because many women are actually advocating the masculine dynamic and even calling it more feminine, spiritual, whatever. But the feminine dynamic, as I understand it, is, well, if you're going to fix the house, you have to also be the house. You have to feel the nails being pounded in, and you have to feel the boards coming up and the rearrangement of the furniture. And you also have to be the fixer, and you cannot separate the two. If you're going to move into relationships with others, you have to experience the bond in everything you say and do. Otherwise, you're talking from a position of superiority, or more realistically, alienation. You are an alien to the relationship. This is how I see Esther and how I see many channelers, especially by the very fact that these people aren't coming from their hearts. They're not speaking from their spiritual experience. It's not selfhood that they're advocating. They're advocating some transmission. They're advocating a distance and something that it's almost like, well, you don't have the guts to get into your own inspiration and claim that it's yours. Why does it have to be some other thing? Are you so, even if you channel for 10 years, isn't it about time you get up and open up your own channel or something like that? So it's very easy for me that somebody who's become comfortable with the sense that they're channeling can speak from a position as if they're channeling to others. We will tell you how to think. We will tell you what to do. Personally, I would not trust any kind of channeling entity, whatever, that tells me what to do and how to think. In fact, the ones that are the most, even the Christians say, well, those are kind of demonic, or, not to be trusted. So the whole point is that these things help us discover our own points where, look, I'm willing to adapt, to change, to do whatever, but I have a core sense of meaning inside of me. And you emphasize the service to others things in terms of the relationship dynamic, and I'm in full agreement as long as the mentality of service to others is set aside and we can learn to understand what this really is, because we have grown in a matrix that's completely crippled us. No matter what we say about the world healing and everything like that, we still haven't consciously understood how it's going on, and we're addicted to hows, as Peter Van Run said. That's not a bad thing, but the how can only be learned through participation, and every experience is in that sense a lesson. And again, I say that in the sense of take out the mentality of lesson, of learning, the education system and all of that. Unfortunately, our words are all connected to these left-brained lists and menus and definitions that also have these back doors to matrix programs. And it's very, very difficult to distinguish the two. But the best thing to do is occasionally just put all those aside and understand their feelings on their own terms. Understand your feelings on their own terms and the feelings of others on their own terms. There was a woman the other day, and this again struck me. Somebody who comes up and says, I'm tired of you vomiting out your emotions at me. It's like, well, you're obviously in pain because, if you don't want to experience this affliction that is common to all of us, then that means you are in so much pain that you don't feel the support of what I could possibly do, for example, to help alleviate that. In a sense, that tells me that this woman, as a reflection of something from within me, is showing me a part of myself that's so much in pain, she doesn't want to deal with healing. But I don't, I'm not speaking of the woman, though. I'm speaking of the own reflection of myself at this point. That doesn't want to deal with the mentality of healing. The Illuminati are mentalists. They're not even spiritual. They're mental beings. Their minds divorced from bodies. Transhumanism is all about the mind all on its own. Lucifer is about the mind. All of these archetypes are telling us something. Computers, the information age, all of this is being pushed because the deeper levels of feeling, their psychopaths basically want to kill them. They feel that threatened by them. So what is it within me and in my relationship to the energetics of the environment, without saying self or others or whatever, before I come into a position of even, personally speaking, serving others in a way that's a mental, design type of thing, like we normally understand it, I need to come to a point of doing it right, where I understand what I'm doing and I'm absolutely certain that I'm not following a program. How are we on time? I hope
we're good. We're just about, let's see, it's 8:06 and we started at 7:47. So,
okay.
So we're good.
What I wanted to say was that even though this video is probably not as clear and authoritative and whatever as the other ones, this is far more useful in many, many ways, in a different way than any of the other ones, just like yours are useful because it comes from a position of exploring things that are very, very difficult to express. but they're very important because they are in process. This is, if you look at the world and you want to understand, is it going to get better, is it going to get worse, being in the present moment, aside from the mental idea of it or the cliche of it, is being in process, in the turbulence, where it doesn't make sense because you haven't gone through it yet. There's no hindsight. You're in a position basically where you gain your experience from hindsight, but your present feeling is right here where hindsight doesn't exist yet. So in a way, you're also at the frontier, but you don't care what's beyond the frontier. You're not looking into a future. You're not projecting with it. You're looking into the present. And that's where we say, okay, we do create our reality, because as long as we're responsible for the present moment and it's unfolding, it's not going to be, it's, you know, whether it's controlled or not or however, we're still participating in it. We're still an influence in it. Personally, I believe that the ultimate position is that each of us contains the whole world. When you go out into the world, it's a mystical exercise. I mean, and it's not one that's high and mighty or anything. Feel the presence of the world within you. You know, you can visualize it if you want, but even when you go out into the street, for example, you mentioned you were running along the beach and you met this girl that gave you a high five. Imagine it was a dream and you were dreaming it. How would you interpret it as everybody being aspects of yourself? And that's one level. How would you interpret it if you were the world and the whole, you know, event was actually inside of you and you weren't separate? You were experiencing it on the outside as a resonating parallel to something that's going on the inside. If we can really get consciously a handle on that, to embody it, just like we move our hands and effortlessly and we grasp something, that took a long time. I mean, little kids, little infants go through a lot of banging around to learn to just move their legs, all of that stuff. And now we're adults and our minds are really getting in the way often because we're not giving ourselves the patience to learn. And the psychopaths represent that part of us that's so insane that it's trying to get in the way. But that's also part of the process. I'm saying that any experience you have, any moment, you step out of your house, the best service to others you can actually do is to actually open up and have them all be inside of you and experience them as Ron's world, in a sense, because that's really what it is. I mean, from your it's the world from your perspective, and they're experiencing you in the same way, and
Right.
me and everything. But we begin from where we are, and if we do that, then we can observe where our internal process reflects and parallels the external events, just like in the dream. And then we can start moving into the possibility that maybe in this, what people call, it's not an illusion, but it's has many similarities to a dream in the sense that I've expressed it. So you can become lucid. That's the whole point. When you become lucid, then you can create your reality. When you're not lucid, you're at the mercy of whatever subconscious programs, forces, influences, or whatever. These shape the so-called dream. But the dream is just a world. That's just a word. The word dream, I don't have a better one. It's not a dream like the one we have at night. But there's a parallel. I call it lensing, personally. That was, basically, as you have the lens, you have the object on the one hand and the image on the other. Now imagine that the image and the object are not, one is an image and the other an object, but they have equal merit, equal reality. And so the image, one of them is on the inside of you and the other one is on the outside of you. If you move the object, the image moves. But in this metaphor, if you move the image, the object moves as well. So it goes both ways. And my idea of manifesting is this lensing. We are the lens. Our true self is between the image and the object, but it encompasses the image and the object and the light that creates both. And all of these are metaphors and archetypes, of course, but they correspond to feelings. And if you connect the feelings with the meaning, the feelings can teach you. The feelings will tell you how to create that new world. And the mind then becomes tremendously liberated because it realized that its job is to put words to feelings, to put meaning, conceptual meaning to feelings. because the wisdom of feelings is unfathomable. There was a psychologist who's by the name R.D. Laing, and he did research in Scottish, and he did research on schizophrenics. And some of them, people who heard demonic voices and were tortured and tormented. And he figured there were two types of schizophrenics, and even most of the cases, 80%, he says, were like demonic dissociative disorders or whatever, basically fragments that were tormenting these people, telling them they weren't good enough, that they were bad, that they should kill themselves, they should kill other people, whatever. And he said that 10 to 20% of the time, in some or all of the people, occasionally another voice would come in. And this voice was what he would call angelic. And it would give hope and light and this. But he found out that the demonic voices were all on the left brain. It was all words, it was all logic, it was all argumentation, trying to confuse the person, while the angelic influences were from the right brain, where there was no words. It was usually a feeling. And it's not that we've misunderstood these brains, and I don't want to create another polarity with them. The problem is that if you take the archetype to its logical conclusion, the demons are only damned because they've been sent to their hell, separate from where the heaven of the angels is. So if you take this feeling-oriented intuition awareness that really is at the depths of your spiritual voice, my spiritual voice, and it's the connection to the divine. It's not like the one side of the brain is holy and the other isn't. It's just the way the Matrix has set things up at this point, with a false horizontal heaven and hell as opposed to the true pillar dynamic of earth and heaven. And in that case, then you can have the true blessings come in and redeem your demons. And they're not just your demons, because the world within you is also the world without you. Now, if Esther would have expressed this, technically I could have gone to Esther and said all these things, and I don't think she would be disagreeing with me, because I'm not telling anybody how to fix the world or, whatever, or to save the world or whatever. But I'm not telling them that it doesn't need saving either. The point is, our feelings will let us know these things, because we take the feelings from the realm of abstract whateverness and we move them to the realm where we're afflicted. Then we can experience redemption, even just a little bit. We know it's possible. And if it's possible on the inside, it's possible on the outside. And if we become conscious of that connection in our experience, we can start working with it. We can start experiencing where we're manifesting. And I'll tell you, it's the hardest thing in the world. It is many of my own recent and even earlier conclusions come from how difficult this is, to the point of, wow, the world is full of demons, the self is full of demons, there's so much wanting the world to die. You look at the New Agers, many spiritual people just want the world to end, many others, and yet at the same time, that's not what they really want, if you go to a deeper level, because that's not what my deepest self wants. If I'm living in a world and it's holographic, then if I touch my deepest truth, mental metaphors aside, then it has to connect with the truth of the world. It's not about pages and books and letters and numbers. It's about a sense. And I believe us communicating that sense to each other. And the challenge here is putting it into words. Take the mind back from the Illuminati. Take the mind back from the Matrix. Redeem Lucifer. Because that's the power of manifestation. We can't recreate the world with our minds. Everybody knows that. We can't go beyond the current matrix without our logical, whatever mind, and the differentiating capacities and creativity that it has. But our feelings are the redeemer.
Yeah, as I said, my friend, my mentor friend, substitute mom, Dr. Mary, always used to say, thought plus action, or thought plus feeling plus action equals demonstration. And that, to me, sums it up. We have to put them all together. It's not separating them. It's putting them all together into a useful component that enables us to live life fully and completely.
That's a very, very simple and fundamental equation. What I believe we're learning now, I believe intuitively most people will agree with you. I can't find any, even on any logical or intuitive sense, but How do we order these things? Where does thought come in? Where does feeling come in? Is there priority? Does something come first? For me, feeling comes first. And thought, if there's a service, thought is in service to feeling. And then action is determined by that synthesis, where thought is in service to feeling, and then we are motivated. Without motivation, there is no action. And it's very similar to the trident archetype that I talked about, Shiva's trident, where there it's gnosis or wisdom, but it's gnostic understanding, gnostic connection with the world. So the thought that you have is not a mental program, it's perception. It's true perception. And desire, magnetic desire, is the feeling part, and action stems from energy. There is no action. You cannot force action. You cannot say, well, we have to act. Fear is not a motivator for creative action. It's a motivator for avoidance. It's a motivator for defense. It serves us to a point. But the purpose of fear at this time, in my opinion, is for it to be transformed. And from those transformations, the same thing with hatred and everything. But all of this moves us into passions that we're afraid of. We're even afraid. A lot of people are afraid because they're mentalizing the idea that, well, if you actually feel this way, you're going to be selfish or you're going to be this. Trust the feel. Let it go. Do you trust? That's what trusting God means. Going through the connection of saying, well, God isn't intervening in any kind of conceptual manner now. He's intervening through our feelings. He's giving the feminine aspect the authority, basically, and not about women taking over and this and that, but it's about the feeling sense in all of us becoming the authority that brings about the motivations, because feeling is connected to substance, it's connected to physicality, to tangibility, and that's what's meaningful. And you notice anybody who rejects these things, you can sense that, well, they're in denial. And it's not an accusation. You can sense the denial. It's not a matter of mentalizing it again, but I sense the denial. And then I look to myself and go, how's this happening in me? If this was a dream, without having to get into that stupid illusion-reality dichotomy, if this was a dream, how would I interpret it? That seems to help me very much. And it's a piece of advice or suggestion, if you will, that I'd like to, give to people in this talk, that I think they can go about their day and just say, well, pretend it's a dream, and these are all dream figures. How would you interpret this? That's what I mean by archetypal thinking.
Yeah. Well, that's why I ended the blurb today was, how does it make you feel? Because I want people to pay attention to what's going on inside of them. But we have reached our time. We've actually gone 33 minutes now about.
Okay.
So.
It's a nice Masonic number.
Okay.
Well, I enjoyed this talk. I was a little bit hesitant because there was so much chaos of all these things coming together, but I think at least some kind of coherent communication came through this time. And I'm looking forward to the next one.
Okay, thank you, Aristo, and you have a beautiful day.
You too, Ron.
Okay,
Bye-bye.
namaste.